Hey everyone, it's Jessica Michaels here with another design team layout for you for Shimmerz paints. I have a 12 by 12 layout that I'm working on today using a collection by Coco Vanilla Studio called The Great Escape. And I am just prepping a textured sheet of cardstock with some clear gesso to start by Finnabair. And I just like to use my palette knife here, as you can see, and then I'm just going to set that aside to dry. And then I've got my collection here. I'm going to go ahead and start working on my photos. I am using a sketch by Nikki Rowland, and it's a really cute sketch. It has 2 tag features on it. And I wanted to stick pretty closely to this one, but add some mixed media to it. So I'm just working through my pattern papers here from the 6 by 8 paper pad and pulling out a couple patterns that I want to use for my tags. And then I'm just going to use a couple photos on these like the sketch has, but mine are up and down orientation. They're not a landscape, but they are portrait. But I think it's going to work just fine. And I'm just going to build the size of these tags based off of my photos. So I've got some photos here from when we visited Watkins Glen in New York on our way to our beach vacation. And I say beach, but it's not like ocean beach. It was a lake beach in Lake Ontario. So we went up north, which was just wonderful. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And I've got these photos from a little stop along the way on our journey from when we hiked to see all of these gorgeous waterfalls, and we had a really great time, even though it was sweltering and really super hot this day, and you couldn't even touch the water. So that was kind of a bummer because it just looks so refreshing. But you know what? I've got these photos. We had a gorgeous day and the weather was just perfect other than being super hot. So we had a good time, and I snapped these photos along the way. I thought it would be perfect for this layout today. I've got my tags here that I'm working on. So I've just built the tag size around my photo. I know the one on the left in Nikki's sketch is longer. I've actually made mine shorter, so I've kind of reversed it a little bit based on my photos being longer. And then I am just trimming off the excess to make my little tabs here on the sides for that tag shape. And then I'm just lightly tracing a pencil line around where those are going to go on my page so that I can create my mixed media around these tags. I've got my hole punch here. I've already punched the holes in my tags, grabbed some water from my mixed media. The big thing about mixed media is how you prep your paper. I've prepped mine with gesso to hold up to all of these wet mediums and help my paper to not tear or warp. And it also creates some blendability within the colors. So that gesso is really going to allow movement with your colors, allow them to blend together. Versus if you don't use gesso, your paper just soaks up all of the colors immediately and they don't move around and they don't blend. So that's kind of why I use gesso and why I like to use it for mixed media like this. I'm just using some Shimmerz sprays. These are mostly vibes. I've got that greenish blue one at the very top left is called Ocean Water. It's got more of a greenish tint to it. And then the blues that I'm using are a Coloringz in Mama Sings the Blues and a Vibes in Deep Blue Sea. The greenish one there is also a Vibes called Arti-Choked. And then I've got the orange one in Pumpkin Pie. I'll list all these down below so you don't have to remember all these names. I know I've used quite a bit of products today, so I will make sure that I list them down below in the description in case you want to grab any of these from the Shimmerz shop. If you do place an order, just make sure you use my name, Jessica, in the notes section of your order, because then you can get a free gift along with that order. Here I'm just flicking on some splatters just by undoing the nozzle and then just using that tip as a splattering tool, just by kind of flicking it on with my fingertip there. Just creates a little bit more dimension and breaks up the colors a little bit. And then this is just some white acrylic paint. So I'm just using this and adding a little bit of water to make it more, a little bit thinner so that I can actually splatter that on with my paintbrush. Because if you try to do it straight on just with the paint, it's too thick and you can't splatter it. I went in with my heat gun and dried up that layer. I'm adding a second layer of mixed media here. I wanted to get a little bit more of this blue color. I really like this Mama Sings the Blues Coloringz. It's just a really, really nice shade of like a medium kind of a denim-y blue. And I went ahead and added that in and then just adding a little bit more splatters. Then I've got my tags here that I'm just adding back in, just careful not to smudge any of those splatters that I just did. And I wanted to make that one tag just a little bit longer that has the photos on it. So I'm just gonna grab a border die from my stash and cut a scallop border for the very top, and then just go ahead and attach that to the top of my tag using some of this Nouveau Deluxe adhesive. And I do end up adding it to the other tag as well in a different color, just for some balance and some uniformity, and just to kind of make them match a little bit. And then here is kind of where I royally messed this up. And I mean, it turns out okay, it's fine, but I made a humongous boo-boo and I shouldn't have done what I did. I went ahead and added my tags, and I knew that I wanted to do some machine stitching with my sewing machine around these tags, but for some odd reason, I think that I can do this when it's on the paper, which is fine. It's all fine and dandy, unless you still need to add your thread or your trims to the hole in the tag. So here's where you can see that I've already done my machine stitching off camera at this point, and I'm adding in my little hole reinforcement punches here to add that decorative hole around there. And then I realized my mistake right about at this point right here, where I'm trying to thread this through, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I've already sewn this to the paper and cannot access this hole anymore. So you know what? Fake it till you make it. So I'm just going to rough up the edges of these tags like I would have done previously if I wouldn't have sewn this to the page. So I'm just going to rough this up, and then I'm going to use my X-Acto knife to trim out the stitches right here and try to poke this through and maneuver this so it looks like it's through the hole. And you know what? I should have just stapled this down, like stapled the trim to itself, making it look like it was attached to the tag. I should have just done that and just glued it down instead of trying to maneuver this through the hole, since it was already stitched through my paper. I ended up cutting this directly through the entire paper, and it was just a mess trying to get this one in there. But you know what? In the end, it works out, and it's not a big deal. Nobody's ever going to know this except for you guys watching this video. People that are flipping through my books are going to have no clue that this occurred or that there was a problem. I made it look like it was supposed to be. I tried to staple this directly to the tag. I didn't have enough space in there to do that, so I just moved my staple down a little bit further down on the trim piece. That way it just still looks like it's stapled together. It kind of helps hold that into place where I wanted it to be, so it didn't pop up off of my page. And then I did another boo-boo at this point. Thought that I was filming this whole time. I was not, so you missed my stamping, but really didn't miss much. I just used a couple stamps by Ellie's to stamp on this little chipboard sign board. I added those words onto the signs, which I thought just was super cool, and I was totally impressed with myself. And then I've added the little phrase at the bottom on my tag, and then just did my journaling there, which just says the name of the place. And then I've got some flair by Scrappin Happy Studio that just worked out perfectly for this layout. This is some canvas flair. It's been in my stash for quite a while, so I was happy to use some of that on this layout today. That one says take a hike, and then I've added a little binder clip that I have a metal die for by Bramble Fox. And then I've got the chipboard letters here that I'm going to use as my title. That's just from that Great Escape collection by Cocoa Vanilla Studios. And I've grabbed all these other elements from there as well, especially this little adventure title. I thought that was just perfect, that I was getting to use that little adventure piece along with the letters, the chipboard letters, and then that little place, little phrase there, places to go or something, that's from the cut apart sheet from one of the 6x8 papers. So that came in the mini paper pad. And I just cut that out and just roughed up the edges. Then I'm just popping it up with some 3D foam squares on top of my little car, because this was a little kind of a stop in our route to our destination. So I thought that little car was pretty appropriate. Our car was fully packed. It looked pretty similar to that. And I'll be sharing that photo in my little mini album that I'm doing at some point. That's kind of one of my beginning photos, is how packed the car was. And it just kind of got worse and worse along our journey because we stopped for groceries along the way too. So it just was pure craziness by the time we got to our destination. So I'm just using some foam squares again to pop up that element, and then I'm grabbing the little word phrases from this cut apart sheet. This is the one that I mentioned that comes in that 6x8 paper pad, and I'm just cutting a bunch of these phrases out, and I'm going to layer them under that car because that's kind of what the sketch looked like. It had some word bits on the left side of that tag, so I'm just kind of following that sketch and doing the same thing on my layout. So I'm just using my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. It works nice whenever you're trying to glue down embellishments or different elements like this to your mixed media, because sometimes it's hard for adhesive to stick well to mixed media if it's a tape runner or something like that. So I like to use Nuvo glue for anything that I'm adhering directly to my mixed media. I've added some gold splatters. That one was a Color Splash product called Gold Digger. And it's just a really nice shade of gold. And I just wanted to have a little pop of yellow in there somewhere. Baby girl is here and chattering up a storm while I add these little stars on here, just from the chipboard pack and then from that other word phrase pack as well. So I am just finishing this up at this point, just adding a few little touches here and there. I really liked that little star from the die cut pack and another canvas flare from Scrappin Happy Studio. So I'm just gonna lightly glue down my little star down there, and then I'm gonna add some thread in behind my flare, just using some glue dots to sandwich that thread in between there, and then glue directly down to my layout using those glue dots as well. There, I sped that up a little bit. I did add some thread in behind the other canvas flare as well, just to make that kind of balance out and add texture up in that portion as well. Then I'm just basically finishing this up and sticking down all of these chipboard stars. I do like to add glue to the backs of my chipboards just for extra reinforcement, just in case. And then I was done with this layout, and then I realized that I had this whole other pack of kind of they're not really epoxy, but they're kind of like puffy stars and little shapes, like space shapes and things. So I just added a few of those on as well, and then just finishing off my little binder clip up here. Since it has a hole in it, I'm going to go ahead and add some wax twine to that, and then just staple down my ends so they're not all willy-nilly and all over the place in my book. So I'm just grabbing my little tiny attacher stapler by Tim Holtz for that. So I'm going to link all these products that I've used today down below in the description. Here's what the finished layout looks like. Absolutely love how this one came together so quick and easy with that sketch by Nikki. So thank you, Nikki, for the inspiration today. And as usual, I will link all the products down below that I've used today in case you want to grab anything from anywhere or know what I used. And thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for being here and have a great day. Bye-bye.